Rachel unlocked the front door and stepped into her quiet home. The late afternoon sun cast a soft glow across the living room floor, and for a moment she just stood there taking it all in. At 35 years old, she'd worked her way up to become the deputy CEO of a successful sports nutrition company. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She had a good job, a nice house, and the freedom to come home to peace. Still, at every family event, someone had something to say. "Why aren't you married yet? Don't you want kids?" Rachel would smile and brush it off. She wasn't in a rush. She liked her life exactly as it was. Remember to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more of this. Her younger brother Ethan, now 28, had married his longtime girlfriend Megan just the year before. Rachel had happily gifted them $15,000 to help with the wedding expenses. "You didn't have to do that," Ethan had said. "I wanted to," Rachel replied with a smile. "It's a big step. I'm proud of you." The wedding itself had gone smoothly. Megan looked lovely in her lace dress and Ethan couldn't stop beaming. The ceremony took place in the small church their family had attended for years. But during the reception things turned awkward, as they often did. "Rachel, when are you going to settle down?" her Aunt Linda asked, balancing a plate of cake in one hand. "You're the only single one left," added Aunt Karen. Rachel kept her smile polite, though her stomach turned. "Maybe one day," she said calmly. She already knew what was coming. Her mother leaned over from the next table and added, "That house of yours could really use the sound of little feet." Rachel sipped her water and nodded. No point in arguing. She'd heard it all before. Nobody ever asked about her job or her accomplishments. They only cared about whether she had a ring on her finger or babies in her arms. As if those were the only things that made someone successful. After the wedding, Ethan and Megan moved into a small studio apartment their parents owned. It wasn't much, but it was free. No rent, no mortgage, and Rachel helped cover their electric and gas bills. "You sure you're okay helping with that?" her mom had asked. "Of course," Rachel said. "They're family." And it was true, she didn't mind helping. For a while things were fine. Megan always smiled during Sunday dinners, thanked Rachel for helping out, and even asked about work. Rachel believed they were getting along well. "You two doing okay in the apartment?" she once asked. "It's cozy," Megan replied with a laugh. "But we're making it work." Rachel had come a long way. She started working part-time jobs at 16, studied hard in college, and spent over a decade climbing the ladder. Finally, 3 years ago she was promoted to deputy CEO. Her salary was excellent, and 2 years back she bought herself a 4-bedroom house in a quiet, safe neighborhood. It had a modern kitchen, a lovely backyard, and bright windows that filled the place with light. "I earned every inch of this," she told herself the day she signed the papers. She even gave her parents a spare key, thinking they might need it in case of an emergency. Back then she had no reason not to trust them. Every Sunday, Rachel went to her parents' house for dinner, a tradition that had lasted since she and Ethan were kids. Her mom usually made pot roast or baked chicken, and the whole family would gather around the old wooden table to share stories from the week. Lately, though, Rachel had noticed a shift. Megan had started making little comments. Subtle at first, but they always seemed to circle back to Rachel's house. "It must be nice having so much room," Megan would say casually while cutting into her dinner. Rachel would smile, pretending not to notice the dig. But she did. She noticed everything. One night, Megan's comment was more direct. "It's kind of funny," she said, stabbing at her salad. "Single people end up with big houses and couples are crammed into tiny apartments." Rachel didn't say anything, but her parents nodded along, like Megan had just said something profound. "Must be tough living in such a small place," her mom added. Rachel clenched her jaw and looked down at her plate. She wanted to say something, but part of her still hoped they weren't serious. Surely they couldn't be planning something, right? Rachel tried not to overthink it. Maybe it was just venting. Apartments could feel cramped, especially for newlyweds. But as the weeks passed, the comments grew bolder. Megan sighed dramatically every time someone mentioned Rachel's house. "That backyard must be great for parties," she'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then Ethan started chiming in. "We've been thinking about having kids," he said one evening, resting his hand on Megan's belly. "But babies need space, you know?" He looked directly at Rachel as he said it. Her parents beamed like it was the most brilliant plan in the world. The problem wasn't just the comments. It was how Rachel's parents reacted. They didn't shut it down or defend her. Instead they joined in, nodding, agreeing, smiling. Rachel felt like she was being cornered, like some silent plan was forming behind her back. She had spent years supporting them all. Paid for Ethan's wedding. Covered their utilities. Helped her parents during rough patches. And yet she was being treated like she had too much, like she didn't deserve what she'd worked for. "Why is it selfish to live in a house I paid for?" she asked Lisa at work one day. "Because you're not married," Lisa replied flatly. "And in their eyes that means you don't need it." 3 months later, Rachel felt the tension peak during another Sunday dinner. Something was off. Her parents were acting nervous, sharing glances with Ethan and Megan. Megan wore a huge grin the entire evening, one Rachel hadn't seen before. And Ethan kept reaching over to touch her stomach gently, like it was made of glass. Rachel's heart sank. She already knew what they were about to say. Sure enough, as soon as everyone sat down, Ethan cleared his throat. "We have some news," he announced. Megan clasped his hand and beamed. "We're having a baby." Their parents erupted into cheers. Rachel forced a smile. "Congratulations," she said and meant it. But deep inside, something told her the real conversation hadn't even started yet. Just as Rachel was reaching for her water glass, her mother looked over with a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, at least one of my children is giving me grandchildren," she said, her tone almost playful, but the jab was sharp. Rachel froze for a moment, her fork halfway to her mouth. "I was starting to think it would never happen," her mom added, laughing. The table chuckled along, but Rachel stayed silent. She forced another smile, refusing to let the comment ruin the moment. "That's wonderful news," she said again, trying to push the tension down. But her stomach had already started to twist. Then Megan turned toward Rachel, still smiling sweetly. "Actually, Rachel, there's something else we've all been talking about," she began. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "It's about where everyone's living," Megan said, glancing at Ethan and then at Rachel's parents. They were all nodding as if this was some group presentation. "It just doesn't feel fair," Megan continued. "You live alone in that big house with 4 bedrooms, while we're squeezed into a studio apartment, soon with a baby." Rachel blinked, not saying anything yet. She was stunned. Was this really happening? Rachel put her fork down slowly. "What does that have to do with me?" she asked calmly. That's when her mom leaned in. "Honey, it's time to be a real sister. Show your love for Ethan and your future nephew." Rachel narrowed her eyes. "How exactly do I do that?" Her father spoke next, his voice firm. "You give the house to Ethan and Megan. They need it more than you do." For a moment Rachel thought she'd misheard. But no one was laughing. They were all dead serious. "You're kidding," Rachel said, standing up from her chair. "You want me to give them my house? The one I bought? With my money?" "Don't be dramatic," her mother said. "It's not like you need all that space. You can move into their apartment." Rachel let out a bitter laugh. "Into the studio? The one I help pay for?" "It's more than enough for one person," her dad said. "And we'd make it official," he added. "You sign the deed to Ethan and we'll sign the apartment over to you. Fair trade." Rachel stared at all of them. "You really think this is fair?" she asked. "I worked for 13 years to get where I am. I saved, sacrificed, and earned that house. You want me to hand it over because they decided to have a baby?" Her mother folded her napkin slowly. "Stop being selfish, Rachel." The word hit harder than she expected. "Selfish?" she repeated, her voice rising. "You call me selfish, but I gave Ethan $15,000 for your wedding. I pay your bills. I've always helped this family." "That's different," Ethan said with a shrug. "This is about a home for our child." Rachel turned to him, furious. "So you think I should just step aside and give up everything because you got someone pregnant?" "Rachel, you're not being reasonable," her mom snapped. "You're just an old maid who's never going to settle down anyway," her dad added. The room went quiet. Rachel felt the heat rise to her face. The words stung, deeply. She'd been insulted before, but never like this. Not by her own father. "You really think I don't deserve my house because I'm single?" she asked, her voice trembling with rage. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You're being greedy. Family is supposed to help family." "Greedy?" Rachel snapped. "I've helped all of you more than I've ever helped myself." Her fists were clenched now. "You didn't even ask. You just planned to take it." Her mother looked away. That's not true, she said, but she didn't sound confident. Rachel took a deep breath. Here's an idea, she said. Sell the studio apartment and use that money to help them get a house. Her parents exchanged an awkward look. We can't afford a second mortgage, her dad muttered. Then live within your means, Rachel said sharply. Stop trying to solve your problems by stealing what I've earned. She grabbed her purse and stood. I'm done with this conversation. Rachel, wait, her mom called after her. You're being ridiculous. Selfish, her dad added. Greedy, Ethan mumbled under his breath. Rachel stopped at the door and turned. I'm not giving up my house. That's final. Then she walked out and didn't look back. Back home, Rachel stood in her living room looking around slowly. Her eyes landed on the couch she'd saved 6 months to buy, the dining table where she read books and paid bills, the soft rug under her feet. This was her life. Every inch of it. Earned. Fought for. Nobody had handed her anything. Let them call me greedy, she whispered, her voice shaking. But this house is mine. She made herself a cup of tea and sat by the big window that looked into her backyard. The quiet felt sacred. The next morning her phone started ringing at 7 a.m. She let it buzz. It was her mother. Then her father. Then Ethan. Then Megan. One after another all morning. She didn't pick up. She showered, got dressed, and went to work. At lunch, sitting in the break room, she finally checked her phone. 12 missed calls, 20 text messages. Her sandwich grew cold as she read them. From Mom, we need to talk. You're being unreasonable. From Dad, family comes first. Ethan needs your help. From Ethan, Megan cried all night. You're hurting a pregnant woman. From Megan, I thought you loved me like a sister. I guess I was wrong. Rachel sighed. She deleted every message and turned off her phone. For the next 3 days, Rachel's phone didn't stop ringing. Every few hours, one of them would call or text. When she didn't respond, the voicemails started piling up. Each one more desperate than the last. Rachel, this is your mother. You're tearing the family apart, one message said. Rachel, it's your father. I'm disappointed in you. This isn't how we raised you, another scolded. Then came Ethan's voice. You're stressing Megan out. If anything happens to the baby, it's on you. That one made Rachel clench her fists. How dare they blame her for something like that? She finally showed the messages to her best friend Lisa at work. Lisa, who'd seen Rachel through promotions, breakups, and years of family drama, shook her head as she scrolled through the texts. Are they serious? She asked, stunned. Rachel leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Apparently, I'm single-handedly ruining a pregnancy because I won't give up my house. Lisa laughed dryly. They're gaslighting you. This is emotional blackmail. I know, Rachel sighed. But it still gets under my skin. Don't you dare give in, Lisa said. You've done nothing wrong. By the end of the week, the guilt-tripping evolved. Her parents started texting Bible verses and inspirational quotes about generosity. Her father sent her a story about a woman who gave up her home to help her struggling sister. Underneath, he wrote, "You could be the hero in this story." Rachel nearly choked on her coffee when she read it. A hero? She thought. By surrendering everything I worked for? That wasn't heroism. That was foolishness. She tossed the phone on the couch and let out a bitter laugh. Megan's messages hit even harder. She started sending Rachel ultrasound photos with captions like, "Your nephew needs space to grow." Another came with a picture of their cluttered studio apartment. "Is this where you want your family to raise a child?" Rachel rubbed her temples. He wanted to scream. "You're living there for free," she muttered under her breath. He typed a reply, then deleted it. Responding would only feed the fire. She knew the best thing she could do was ignore them. Silence was her only weapon now. That Friday everything took a turn. Rachel had been feeling off since morning. A dull headache, slight fever, aching joints. By noon she told her assistant she was heading home early. "I think I'm coming down with something," she said. She left the office and drove home exhausted. But as she turned into her street, her stomach dropped. A moving truck sat parked in front of her house, and behind it, her parents' car. Her heart pounded. "No. No, no, no," she whispered, speeding into the driveway. Something was very wrong. Rachel rushed to the front door and unlocked it with shaking hands. Inside, she was met with the sound of rustling paper and footsteps. Her mother stood in the kitchen wrapping dishes in newspaper, while her father packed books into boxes. Her mouth went dry. "What are you doing in my house?" she asked, her voice sharp. They both turned around, startled. "Rachel," her mom said sweetly, "we didn't expect you home so early." "I asked you a question," Rachel repeated. "What are you doing?" "We're just helping you move," her dad said, not even looking up from the bookshelf. "Ethan and Megan are going to settle in today." Rachel's hands started shaking. "I told you I wasn't moving. I said it over and over again." "You don't need all this space," her mom said matter-of-factly. "It's not fair to keep it all to yourself when there's a baby on the way." Rachel's voice dropped to a growl. "This is my house. You had no right to come in here and touch anything." They ignored her. Her mom folded one of Rachel's sweaters and placed it gently into a box. Her dad wrapped a framed diploma in bubble wrap. "Stop," Rachel shouted. "Stop touching my things." "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," her mom said. That was the moment Rachel snapped. She stormed up the stairs, pulled out her phone and called the police. "I need to report a break-in," she told the dispatcher. "People are in my house. They're packing up my belongings. I didn't give them permission." "Are you in immediate danger?" the dispatcher asked. "No," Rachel replied, voice trembling. "But they won't leave. They're taking my things." "Officers will be there shortly," the dispatcher assured her. Rachel hung up and stood in the hallway, heart racing. Minutes later, a police car pulled into the driveway. 2 officers stepped inside and Rachel met them at the door. "That's them," she said, pointing at her parents. "They broke in and started packing everything up." Her mother tried to laugh. "Officers, this is our daughter. We're just helping her move." "Ma'am, did you ask for their help?" the first officer asked Rachel. "Absolutely not," Rachel said firmly. "I've told them repeatedly that I'm not moving." The second officer turned to her parents. "Sir, ma'am, you're going to need to come with us." "This is ridiculous," her mother yelled. "She's our daughter." "That doesn't give you the right to enter her home without consent," the officer replied calmly. Her dad lost it, yelled something and tried to shove past them. The officers acted fast. In minutes, both of Rachel's parents were being led out of the house in handcuffs. Rachel stood frozen in the doorway, watching her parents being escorted to the police car. Her mother screamed at the officers, while her father looked humiliated but defiant. The movers stood awkwardly near the truck, not sure what to do next. One of them finally asked, "Should we unload the boxes?" Rachel didn't hesitate. "Yes. Put everything back exactly where you found it, and send the bill to whoever hired you." She walked back into her kitchen, the walls echoing with silence now, and sat down at the table. She wasn't sure whether to cry or scream. Instead, she just breathed. A couple hours later, Rachel's phone rang. The caller ID said, "Police station." She picked up. "Rachel, it's your mother." The voice came through tight and cold. "You need to drop these charges right now." Rachel stared at the wall. "No. I'm not dropping anything." "We're your parents," her mother insisted. "We were just trying to help." "By stealing my house?" Rachel snapped. "By breaking in and packing up my things like I was a tenant?" "You're blowing this out of proportion," her mother said. "Then I guess you'll have to deal with the consequences," Rachel replied and hung up. The next morning, Rachel visited the station and confirmed with the officer that she did not want to drop the charges. "They crossed a line," she said. "And if I let this go, they'll think they can do it again." The officer nodded. "It's your right." Her parents were released on bail later that day. Rachel expected an angry phone call, but nothing came. Instead, her grandmother called. "They're upset," Grandma said quietly. "They said you betrayed them." Rachel sighed. "They betrayed me, Grandma. They tried to erase my independence like it meant nothing." Her grandmother hesitated. "I told them they were wrong, Rachel. I really did. But, calling the police on your own parents, that's hard to swallow." Rachel's voice softened. "I get it. But I had no choice. If I let them bulldoze me, they'll never stop." There was a long pause on the line. "You're right," Grandma whispered. "They've always taken you for granted." After that, Rachel didn't hear from her parents or Ethan for days. The silence was unexpected and peaceful. No guilt, no pressure. She started sleeping better, working better, even smiling without forcing it. Then the letter arrived. A white envelope in her mailbox, sealed with her mother's fancy handwriting. She opened it and read the words slowly. After much thought and discussion, we've decided to disown you. You are no longer our daughter. Your selfish actions have hurt this family beyond repair. You chose a house over blood. We will not be contacting you again. It was signed, Former Mother. Rachel stared at the paper. She waited for the tears, but none came. Instead, she felt a strange, calming wave of peace. Relief. They thought this letter would break me, she thought. But it set me free. The weeks that followed were the most peaceful of Rachel's adult life. No more Sunday dinners filled with judgment. No more demands for money. No more lectures about her choices. She went to work, came home to her cozy house, and did exactly what she wanted. On a quiet Saturday morning, her phone rang. It was her grandmother. They sold their house, she said. And the studio apartment too. Bought 2 smaller places. One for themselves and one for Ethan and Megan. Rachel exhaled slowly. They could have done that from the start. Exactly, her grandmother said. But they didn't want to spend their money. They wanted to take yours. Rachel leaned back in her chair. They assumed I'd be too afraid to say no. Too desperate for their approval. They were wrong, her grandmother said softly. They didn't see how strong you are. Rachel thanked her and hung up, looking around at her living room. Her couch. Her rug. Her framed photos. Her peace. She had stood her ground and she was still standing. Stronger. Wiser. Freer than ever. Months later, Rachel sat in her backyard on a cool evening, wrapped in a blanket and sipping tea. A gentle breeze brushed her skin as wind chimes danced above. Her house stood behind her, solid, earned hers. The family she thought she needed had abandoned her. But in their absence she'd found something even better. Self-respect. Her phone buzzed on the table. Another message from Lisa. Proud of you. Rachel smiled. She had been called selfish, greedy, even heartless. But now she knew the truth. She wasn't any of those things. She was simply done being used. Moral lesson. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who take you for granted. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's a powerful act of self-respect. Remember to hit the like button, comment and subscribe to this channel for more of this.